So it looks like everybody can see our screen, and I know we're a couple minutes past, so we're going to get started right away. First off, I wanted to thank you guys all for joining us today. We're super excited to announce our integration with Procore today. So first off, I want to just introduce to you guys the people that are going to be speaking today. Myself on the far left, Dave McCool from Procore in the middle, and Brett Settles, our Global Technical Director here at Revizto. So to start off here, guys, today we're going to be doing a live demonstration and really walking through the exact workflow that you guys would be utilizing while communicating between the field team and the office team. To get started here, we're going to kind of walk through the why of why did we do this partnership. So what was the driving factor, and what were the questions and concerns customers are saying, hey, you guys should integrate with Procore. And after that, we're actually going to walk through this exact workflow that you guys can see on the screen today. And we're going to do this all live for you. So we didn't want to go through a PowerPoint slide similar to what we do with all of our Revizto global webinars. We wanted to be able to showcase this live and walk through the exact workflow. So we're going to do that, and we're actually going to elevate that all the way to Procore, and then have Dave walk through the new coordination module in Procore. So without further ado, I'm going to actually pass this over to Dave, and Dave's going to actually just walk into the why. You know, why did we spend this amount of effort for this integration, and what's the problem that we're actually solving? Dave?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And let me echo also thanks for tuning in. I mean, I know you guys are busy, and it really means a lot that you're taking time out of your day to see this integration. Also, the interest, the level of interest definitely shows us there's a need here. And so I do want to talk about the why. When you look at it from a high level in Procore's mission, right, it's really to improve the lives of everyone in construction. And the reason that we built, which you'll see the design coordination product is, and these types of strategic integrations with Revizto, is because we do believe that this provides you a solution to solving a key problem in the industry, and that's impacting the lives of the field and office staff. And, you know, this provides you, and that problem that we believe is that this provides you with the ability to create better designs that are constructible and having constructible documents so that you can have predictability in the field and less surprises. Or another way to put it, which is a little bit simpler, is eliminate RFIs, right? Because when you think about RFIs, we have, you know, our industry kind of has this general acceptance that RFIs are just business as usual, and it's normal practice. And we also, sometimes it's viewed as a fee enhancement. You know, the more you find, the more fee that you can make. And for those, and majority of you that are in VDC that understand kind of the promise of BIM as the modern day measure twice cut once, when you think about that, that's a kind of a short-sighted version of the story, because those RFIs have a rippling impact and a significant impact on the quality of life of the field and office. And so let's, you know, just to kind of paint the picture, if we look at the field staff, and this may resonate with a lot of you, but you can make the argument that the RFIs are actually, and these surprises are a major catalyst of contention on the job site between the office staff, right? So the PM of the GC, designers, and Mark, you can go to the next slide, but the, you know, the PMs of the GC, the architect, the designers, the owner, the CM firm, and a number of you, I'm sure, have been in those OAC meetings, right, where you're preparing for battle. You have your RFI list or your surprises, you're making your arguments, you're getting ready for that meeting so you can go in and state your case, why the schedule's slipping, why we're losing productivity, and kind of publicly display this in front of the owner and kind of embarrass the designers. And of course, what do? Well, they get defensive mode, and they say, well, it was design intent, right? This is, you're responsible for means and methods. You needed to field validate and field verify. You should have known that when you bid. And 90% of the time, it becomes this epic finger-pointing battle of whose fault was it, and a lot of contention. And really, as Stephen Covey would put it, it's a win-lose or lose-win situation. There's really never a win-win in this scenario, and somebody's going to end up with the short end of the stick, whether the owner comes out of pocket for it, whether it gets fee erosion on the GC side, or comes out of your contingency, which could be a fee enhancement, or it just gets passed down to the subs. and the subs have to eat the cost or figure out back charges between each other. It's really, there's never a good scenario, and this leads to a significant amount of stress and sleepless nights and maybe consumption of alcohol. But it's not the best quality of life. And this, you know, one of the sources of this is those surprises, those RFIs that come up in construction that could have potentially been prevented during design. Right, and so that's the field side. If you look at, I'm sorry, that's the office side. If you look at the field side, it's actually worse, right? When you think about it from a quality of life, because these same RFIs can just completely bring work to a stop. And when you stop work, obviously you lose your flow. You have to start moving people around to work they can work on. You may have to, you know, the resource management can go out the window. People that were supposed to be off the job are still on the job, or you may shift them off and then start pulling off the bench of people that are unfamiliar with the project. Then when these RFIs come back online or get resolved, now depending on if you got the schedule delays, you're in this time crunch. Right, and so the labor that may be unfamiliar with the job, or even the ones that are, start to potentially take shortcuts. And for all of you, you know, when you take shortcuts in construction, that's when you get hurt. If not, you get killed, right? So studies have shown, and I talked about this at Groundbreak, but studies have shown that 60 to 70% of all injuries on the job site are caused by rework. And then other studies that I've researched have shown and concluded that actually 42% of fatalities in construction could have been eliminated or reduced by better designs. Right? So this is why we built design coordination and these strategic partnerships with Revizto, because we believe that with the combination of these two solutions, it provides you with, not only gives you choice in selecting the right tool for the job, and regardless of what you choose, you always have a source of truth, which we'll talk about later in the webinar, but it gives you the best chance of combating this problem, delivering those constructible documents, achieving predictability in the field, and ultimately providing that safer working environment for both field and office staff. So with that, I will get off the soapbox and let Brett dive into the demo. But I just want to talk and kind of level set on why we built this integration and what it means for the industry and you.
Yeah, thanks a bunch, Dave. Am I coming through on voice?
You are.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Mark and Dave, for the introduction and speaking to some of the problems that plague our industry here. On the Revizto side of things, for those of you that don't know what our software is all about, our software is a coordination and design review platform that's wrapped around an issue tracker for accountability and tracking the issues and the purposes of what those issues are for. Now, going back to what Dave said about the RFIs and eliminating RFIs, providing that safety, providing a solution to those budgetary concerns, the way Revizto alleviates that problem is through context. Most RFIs most likely come out of the fact that you don't have enough information. So what Revizto does is Revizto really works to bring together all of this contextual information that you see. So Revizto works with 2D documents, 3D models, scan information, reporting aspects, issue tracking. And what you'll see here is not only are we consistent across the different platforms here. So if we come in here and we start looking at some of these issues here, and maybe I come in here and I look for, this clash issue, you're going to see that on the PC that you see that there, but you're also going to see that whenever we look for that same exact issue here, that we're going to be able to navigate directly to it as well on the iPad and get that contextual information there. Now, 1 second here, I think that my Reflector app is not working, so let me get that up and going real quick. I do apologize, guys. I've been testing this all morning, and this is the first time that happened. So I'll be real quick about this. All right, so here we go. I do apologize for that slight delay. But what you'll see here is, as we flip through these issues, maybe I want to go look at a Procore RFI that's already been categorized here. You'll see that we can flip in between these here, and the interface of our software is consistent from the iPad to the field. This really lends itself well to training, but it also lends itself to the communication between the field and the office in this situation. So not only that, but what you're going to see is that we can see where these issues arise, not only in the markup that we see there, but also directly in the 3D model, as well as where this issue resides on the 2D documents. So,
hey Brett, I don't know that we are seeing your iPad up on the screen.
I see it.
You see it okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good deal.
Yeah.
Well, then it must be on my end.
Absolutely. Looks like we got some stuff coming through the chat here. Maybe someone else ain't seeing it. It's good. Okay, good. Everyone's seeing the iPad, so wonderful. So the thing is as we go through these issues, what you're going to see is that not only can we see where these reside in the 3D space with the contextual value of that scan data, providing further predictability during coordination, but all of this is interconnected using the intelligence of the model itself. Revizto lends itself really well to acting as that connective tissue between your design documentation, your design models, into the coordination and design review process, and then further breaking down even more silos as we connect to Procore in this situation. So what we're going to do is let's see how this works and how this integration is going to play out for you guys that are working on the GC side or even on the subcontractor side. So if we have an issue here, and let's say that we go back into this one, and what we have here is we have a coupling clashing with an existing piece of conduit that is going to remain in service as this project continues. So when we see this coupling here, we notice that the fastening over there, it needs to be rotated, but there may be some things on the design side that we need to verify there. So let's say that we want to get this issue up to an RFI or up to coordination issues to then be put into the RFI status of Procore. It's as simple as going over to the issue here and actually just sending this issue directly up to Procore. You'll see that with one click, we can send this information up to the coordination module. And let me move this out of the way a little bit here. And you can see all that information comes directly in. Now, the reason that this is really important is that there are a lot of mutual clients that we have that, you know, data entry, as simple as it seems, is actually a big time concern. We have clients that are coordinating in Revizto and then lifting all that information out of Revizto in terms of reports and Excel spreadsheets, commentary, screenshots, all of that, and then documenting that into Procore. And we found that that's a huge time concern for our clients. And that's where this partnership really spawned out of, was to break down the silos in between the information sources and also provide a workflow that just simply makes sense. So as we go through here and we look at this coordination issue, what we're going to see here is I look at the information behind here, you're going to see that in the Revizto platform, we can see that this has been put into the coordination issues inside of Procore, and we actually have a live link to it, which is right here. And we'll get into that a little bit further as we move along here. But let's say that this information is going to have to go through the paces of generating an RFI. In that case, inside of the Procore coordination module, this is where we can come in here and we can begin to create that. So we can come in here, and I'm going to expand this up a little bit and pull it down just so that we can see this interaction here whenever this takes place. But we can come in here and fill out this information, as well as select a RFI manager. Now, once we do that, we can then shift the ball from the coordination side into the ops side simply and relay that information back to the people on doing the coordination simply by creating this draft here. And what you're going to see is down here on the Revizto iPad app, that connection is instantly created. And now the people coordinating in the field can tell that there's an RFI in progress here. And as this RFI progresses with official responses, as well as receiving an RFI number, you're going to see this update and provide that transparency and you know, that just context as to the situation going on from Procore into Revizto. So as we go down here, let's say that we access the draft RFI here, and as we push this through the process, we're going to go in here, edit this. Let's go ahead and assign that assignee here. So we're going to give this one to Dave as well. Now, once we do this and we save this as open and this RFI is issued a number, we're going to see that interaction take place right here. And essentially, as you're moving through the process, this is going to allow anyone that's inside of the coordination platform to interact with Procore. And the thing that really makes a lot of sense here is that in construction, it takes a lot of people to complete a project. And there are a lot of people that are crucial to completing that project that are not going to be flying around in the models and flying around in the 3D space, looking at these issues. And our connection here is going to allow you to begin to push all this information from coordination all the way up through Procore into your financials, into all the aspects of your source of truth for your project here. So as we go down here, we're going to see even some further interaction as we look at this. So as we come down here, let's say we add an official response to this. So we go in here, we have this official response as to how this is going to be solved. We can mark this as official and then add that response. Now, once that response is received and everything is processed in Procore, you're going to see that it is now released up to from that RFI, and then the coordination team can continue on with everything that they're doing in the field. Now, the important thing to remember here is the connectivity between the two, and I think Dave's going to expand on this as he gets into his portion of his coordination tool. But if you notice here, we have direct connections both to the RFI and to the coordination module. Not only that, but we have a direct connection between the field and the office and the coordination platform in Revizto itself. So it really lends itself to a lot of transparency among the teams that are crucial to making this project happen without incident. It adds a great amount of context into the coordination process with our platform and the ability for point clouds and automated stamp issue creation for repetitive issues and things like that. That it just creates an environment where it crunches schedules, allows people to get that context that they need. And if you're in the field, as you can see here, if I click right here, sorry, it's going to make me log in real quick. I'm going to have to change my password right after this. So as you can see, here we are in the field. We use that connection right there, and that allows us to get right to the information that we're dealing with. If I come back here, maybe I want to look at the RFI. I can click on that RFI, and instead of looking into the coordination module, I'm looking into the RFI itself. And as Dave's going to compound on this point as he goes through here, all of this is deeply connected together as we can drive down from the RFI into the links of the coordination issues and all the way back to the source of where it was found, which was Revizto. So Dave, I'm going to hand it back to you now, okay?
Sounds good.
Awesome.
All right, can everybody see the coordination issues tool? Perfect. Okay. So yeah, let me, Brett touched on 3 critical things that I think enable you to have more predictable results in the field, but I do want to brag a little bit on Revizto real quick before I jump into this, because I think it's important, and Brett kind of touched over them pretty quickly, but there's a number of things that are helping you achieve predictability, and one of those is obviously the 2D to 3D integration. They have a very robust, people call it hypermodel, right? That hypermodel approach where you can see the 2D related to 3D really helps you visualize those issues in both spaces. The other thing it does is that not everything's modeled. There's a lot of issues on 2D that aren't in 3D. And so I think that's really important to touch on. And the last thing is, which I think y'all just released recently around our groundbreak, was the laser scanning integration, which I think is important, because when you think about the reason why we can't achieve this kind of prototyping and manufacturing approach, a lot of that is because every project's different and you're faced with different existing conditions. So laser scanning is really helping to combat that. So now you can scan, have that overlaid on design documents and the design models, and start to really get better results and understanding of those existing conditions to eliminate surprises in the field, kind of touching back on that point. So just wanted to brag a little bit on the Revizto side before I jump into the coordination issues in our side of the platform. So as Brett mentioned, like I said, there are 3 critical things I think are important takeaways. One is your ability to achieve predictability and solve more issues is really dependent on breaking down the silos. As Brett mentioned, and potentially, and maybe they'll cover their ears on this, Mark and Brett, but not everybody necessarily will be flying around models and using Revizto. They may not install it on their computer. They may not have the ability to install it on their computer. And so when you think about facility managers doing access zone reviews, or your owners or architects, when these issues get pushed up into Procore, now the larger team can access that information. And so if I were to come in here and just look at the different elevated items that have been elevated to RFIs, I can isolate those issues, and anybody on the team now has transparency and visibility in these issues. If they're assigned to them, they can come in and click on them. They can see the issue. It's a much more visual tool than the other tools that we have. So without opening any BIM application, they can start to interact and understand what's going on in coordination and have that visibility and transparency. So again, kind of breaking down the silos of the VDC team, operations, design team, owner, leveraging the collective mind, those lessons learned from all those stakeholders, so that you can solve more issues and solve them faster. So I think that's one important key piece, is just that you have now, you're starting to break down those silos with the team so that you can leverage the collective knowledge of the team. The other one, which you touched on, Brett touched on as well, is the source of truth. You hear a lot of people talk about the common data environment, or having this hub and having a source of truth. Well, you have that, right? So design issues can come from anywhere. So you need a place in a repository to track these, not just for communication and transparency, which I mentioned, but historical information. And so this integration starts to connect your data in one location. Procore becomes that hub of information, even though you're using different tools. So for instance, let me walk you through a scenario. I'm just going to click on one of the issues that I have and kind of walk you through the platform. So we have a mechanical issue that was sent to us from Revizto. And so we're looking at the issue as we saw. This is the snapshot from the program, and we can see that it came from, which I'll come back to, it came from Revizto, but it resulted in an RFI. So now we can click into that RFI and start to understand the data around this RFI, the story of this issue. So we could come down and look at any of the responses that came back from the design team and owner as they worked through it in the official response. But what we also see is that there was a change event. So now we're going into financials. We can click into the financial tools, and we can start to understand the cost impact of those issues. This becomes really important, because as the industry, that's kind of been a red herring. How do you quantify BIM? You prevented something from happening. Now you can start to connect it. Now you can start to quantify it. Now you can start to understand what was the cost impact of not buying out that trade, or this coordination issue, and learn from those so that you can prevent them from happening on future projects. And so I just want to walk back through from our financials tool back to the RFI. You can see that that was originated from a coordination issue. We're back in the coordination issue, and then I can go all the way back into Revizto. And so when I click on that, it's actually going to take me into Revizto, which is, again, these are all the issues that Brett was going through. So very connected, which leads to the last piece, right? So breaking down the silos, leverage the collective knowledge. Source of truth, so you have historicals, you have a place to track, everybody's on the same page. And the last thing is speed and efficiency. Solve more, solve them faster. These design schedules are getting more and more aggressive, as you know. Fast track is very popular, obviously, with these integrated delivery methods. And so you are up against the gun to solve these issues, solve them faster on more complicated projects. And so it is paramount that you have speed and efficiency with these. And so we believe that those three things are very critical, again, to allowing you to chip away at the problem of creating constructible documents and achieving predictability in the field to provide a safer working environment for the staff, both office and field. So with that, again, I love watching the demo when Brett does it. This has been a great partnership. Really looking forward to the mutual customers that are rolling this out, to talk to them to continue to improve this integration. Yeah, I think at this point, I'll turn it over to Mark to kind of wrap up, and then we can open it up for any questions that people have.
Absolutely. Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Brett. So guys, I think it's really important to note, just building off of Dave's point, is breaking down, the barriers of once, information has been siloed and being able to go back. And not only, this is something that we didn't really touch on, but not only being able to view that issue back in Revizto, but because of the nature of how Revizto is set up based on the XYZ coordinates, that means you can go back to Tekla, you can go back to Revit, you can go back to CAD NEP, you can go back to Civil 3D, you can go back to any other platform that is leveraging the same coordinates that were laid out during the project's lifecycle. So I think it's really important to note that this is really opening up, the data to allow people to dig in deeper and really see the extent of these issues that are being, documented within Procore system. And so without further ado, I think we're going to open it up for questions. So Brett, if you want to kind of filter through some of the questions and maybe pick out a few good ones. I know we have a lot of people writing in, so we won't be able to touch them all today. But if we don't get through them, we'll make sure that we sift through here. And if they're on the coordination module from Procore, we'll make sure that Dave and his team has access to that, and they can get in touch with you after the webinar. And if they're on the Revizto side and they don't get answered, we'll make sure that we have somebody reach out to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me dive into the questions here and see what we got here. So first, we've got a question from Volker. Hey, Volker, nice to see you in the webinar. I haven't talked to you in a while. So here we have, he asked, is the design team connected to the same model? How does this work from a designer point of view of answering the RFI? So back to exactly what we were talking about breaking down the silos between this, is that if we have a situation where a GC is working with trade partners, architects, engineers, what we found is that we can connect them directly to Procore from the project itself and allow them to interact with Procore much easier directly from inside of Revizto. So Revizto really gives them a window to get this information from the main platform that they are using for coordination directly into Procore. And as long as the essential rights are given out to these individual parties on the project, that connection will pretty much be as seamless as you've seen in the demo today. So, and Volker, as you know, if that didn't answer your question completely, you can always reach out to me and we can definitely go through it in detail. So.
Excellent. And I'll go through through one here, Dave, if you want to kind of sift through and see if you see any good ones that you'd like to address. One of the questions coming in from Brian is the pricing package aligned with Procore? So if you are a current Revizto customer, this integration doesn't cost you anything more. So if you guys want to leverage this on your current projects, you're able to do that. From the Procore side, and Dave, correct me if I'm wrong, you do need the coordination module. So if you own the coordination module for Procore, you can link the two projects and have this interaction.
Exactly. Yep.
Perfect. Dave, did you find a question, or do you want to have Brett answer another one?
So one of them was asking about the financial component whether it was part of Procore or an option in a more advanced version, it is in our financial tools. So that integration is part of our financial tools within Procore, where you'd be able to track that.
Excellent. Brett, do you have one of them lined up?
Yeah, definitely. So, so is there any chance to link issue locations on 2D drawings in Revizto with the same locations on 2D drawings in Procore? And Dave, correct me if I get out of line here, but I imagine that that's somewhere that we will end up. But right now, it's basically the coordination module integration with Revizto that you've seen today.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't think that our partnership with Procore is going to end anytime soon, especially with how well this one is going. So we're going to see some deeper integrations in the future, but that is not part of this one.
Yeah, I completely agree, Greg, and it's kudos to the Procore team on the development side. Their API has been super easy to work with, so I think that like anything, this is going to be an ongoing workflow, and there's going to be additional things. So the biggest thing is most of you guys that have been Revizto customers for a while have seen is we always want to get something that is at its earliest usable state out to you guys, but still stable, so we can get user feedback. You guys have probably seen this with the issue tracker over the past 5 years now, that the issue tracker came up and we could basically track a couple issues and filter it by a few minor things, and then as you guys feedback is kind of filtered in, we've added reporting, we've added switch back to 2D, we've added all these other components of that, but we wanted to get the user interface figured out and figure out what the priorities were before we spent development time pushing towards something that you guys maybe didn't want. So we envisioned the same thing with Procore. We wanted to make sure that we could elevate to the coordination module and an RFI, and everything else will kind of be as we hear from our customers what the priority will be.
Great. Yeah, there's one about the rollout of second quarter of this year. So yeah, to your point, Mark, this is available to your current customers as far as design coordination in that product within Procore. If you're interested in this, it's best to get in touch with your account executive for your company to talk about getting access to the tool. And so that's it's currently available. So if you are interested, reach out to your representative at Procore so that we can get you set up.
So,
excellent.
Oh, sorry, Mark.
No, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, one of the other questions we have is from Brig, and he asked, can 2D plans be tied into the Procore RFI from Revizto, not just a screenshot? Once again, I think that this is going to be a point of our future development and partnership together. One of the things that we like to do at Revizto, and I don't want to speak for Dave here, but we like to get out the core functionality to our clients and then utilize their feedback to drive our development path. So this question and answer is great for exactly that. So what we can expect to see is that, as the partnership grows and as time passes, that we are going to be looking to do things similar to that. I just can't say if that will be specifically one, but we are definitely, headed that way.
Yeah, to dogpile a little bit on that, Brig, because it's a great point, and it's part of the reason why we built, that quick links between the tools was because, to your point about the RFI and kind of having it tied to the plans and not just a screenshot, the ability to drill down in as far as you need to go to solve that RFI quicker, right? So one of the things we want to make sure is that when anything is elevated to an RFI, as I mentioned, these are things that are roadblocks that potentially stop work that could cause a serious problem on the job site for the field staff and office. So when things are elevated, we want to make sure that we're providing the design team with everything that they need to respond quickly and get everybody back on track. And so that's part of the reason why there's that hyperlink, but yeah, to Brett's point, we are going to want to constantly improve. But this is, if they need to drill down and the screenshot's not enough, obviously they can drill all the way back to the source and start to navigate around the model if they need to even.
Yeah, it's a good point, Dave. And as you guys can see by that source file, you can go back to Revisto and see exactly where it falls on those documents. And the information is there. Obviously, all of your contractual documents that are a floor plan detail or section or elevation are going to have an XYZ coordinate information there. So there is a way to be able to, that screenshot does actually have a home within that location. I think that's something you guys will probably see in the future with our partnership.
Yeah, so it looks like no question from Frankie, but we have one of the authors of the model that you guys seen today in here. So want to give a big shout out to Frankie for that. So Albert asked, and Dave, I think this is more for you, but is the financial component part of Procore?
Yeah, that was.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I kind of jumped to that one earlier. Sorry about that. Yeah, it is part of the financial part is part of our financial tools that you saw.
Okay.
Saw me present exactly.
So John Peter asks, and this is a very good question: will the dashboard developed on Revizto.com be able to report the Procore issues? I think this is a really good question for our specific customers, because what we see happening is that when we have customers that are not the GC, but are required to interact with Procore in these situations, a lot of those times they want to be able to keep track of things on their end. So the answer to that is absolutely yes, and it will be released here very shortly. So we are going to allow you to use the data from the RFIs, or if the issue is attached to an RFI or a coordination issue, you're going to be able to filter and report on those. And in fact, if you guys are looking at the screens, you can see that I'm able to filter for all of those already. And the reporting aspects are here quickly to follow. So everything about the way our reporting works, the way our filtering works, that is all going to be consistent, and that Procore information that we're tying into is going to be included in that.
Perfect. And maybe let's do one more question from Dave, and Brett, if you find one really good one, last one you want to do, we can do that, and then we'll wrap it up.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that Scott Wida is his question is very relevant to our 2019 initiatives, and I want to touch on that a little bit. So around NDAs, and as a subcontractor, we store a lot of internal info that cannot be shared with other subs or GCs. How does this integration with Procore handle that? Is this common model? Is a common model required? So let me answer the last part. I would think that on that as a best practice, you do want to have at least some sort of common model that everybody's using, so that nobody's looking at old information when you're coordinating. So I would say that as a best practice it is, but obviously you probably want to have your own NWF or merge model that you're using as you're doing your coordination. But I want to touch on the ownership of data. So one of the key initiatives, if you saw our CEO's presentation, Tui's presentation, was on a big push around kind of the Procore to Procore, where it's allowing the different stakeholders that contribute to a project to own their information. And so I would say that's something that we're really going to be focused on and working towards. And so to your point of, lots of internal info that cannot be shared with other subs or GCs, how does this integration with Procore handle that? We are working on that right now as a key focus, so that you can keep your information that's important to you and not expose it to the larger team and own that information as well. So more news to come this year on that one.
Perfect. And Brett, did you find one last one that you'd like to touch on and answer live here? Brett, I think you might be on mute.
Hey, sorry about that. I'm trying to cut down some background noise here. So one of the questions I want to touch on is from Brian Smith, and it's a very wide and broad question, but I definitely want to answer it in here in order to give anyone who's not a current Revisto customer an idea of what we're trying to accomplish. And that question is, is, would it be fair to think of Revizto as sort of like Navisworks with more connectivity? So when I think about that question, the first thing that comes to mind is what were the difficulties with Navisworks when you're coordinating in the field? Well, there are a few difficulties there. One is exactly kind of the point that we've been driving home through this whole webinar, and that is access to data for everyone, and not just data that takes a lot of work to get from point A to point B, but data that's easily accessible. And anyone who's coordinated on Navisworks, there's a few difficulties there. One is the usability of the product. The product is very, very good at what it does. It is very good at federating information. It is very good at providing class results, and it is a very powerful tool that can handle a lot of data. The problem with it, though, is that when it comes into the communication and the data sharing aspect of it. Because what happens is once we get through the parts that Navisworks is very good at, then we start to create this disjointed communication method during coordination, which requires emails and IMs and phone calls and face-to-face meetings that are difficult to track. What we found is that after federating the model, providing the class results or any information by pushing it into Revizto, you're getting the power of sharing all this information via the cloud, point clouds, models, issue information, issue properties, filters, and all of that is instantly dispersed to the greater team. Not only that, our software takes a lot of the aspects of what Navisworks does and simplifies it in a way that where you can easily hand it to a general foreman, and he can use that very easily without a whole bunch of training if he's not already in tune with things like Navisworks. It also provides a way for senior management who has loads of information but maybe not be as technical savvy as the younger generation to get their hands on all of this and feel like they're part of this new and growing technology process that everyone's putting into place. And then you wrap all that around our ability to report in real time, and then the contextual power of all the information that we combine. And I think that Dave brought up a good point in that while this webinar was focused solely on the connection between Revizto and Procore, Dave really did a good job of bragging on us, and that is the fact that all this information is not only interconnected from a data standpoint, but it's also interconnected from a visual standpoint. I can't remember how many times in my career where someone said, "Hey, what about this steel over here interacting with the existing steel from the tower next door?" Well, 5 years ago, that was actually more of a difficult task than it is today, and it was a time-consuming task as well to bring that information together. So I know that was a very long-winded answer to that, but I think it really shines a light on the value that we provide as a design review, coordination, and issue tracking platform, and why our targeted solution towards that provides a lot of power in getting valuable information into Procore.
And Brett, just to add on to that, I completely agree with you. Navisworks has been a phenomenal coordination platform for a long time now, but so is Word in terms of a document system. But the reason that we've, as a company at Revizto, at least, when we're coordinating with each other remotely, we use Google Drive and Google Docs because that information is in real time. With Navisworks, anything that you do in that file, it's held locally. So you need to upload it to an FTP site, you need to take a screenshot, you need to email it to somebody, you need to take that screenshot and post it on Google Drive or post on Slack or post it in Procore, something that's live that becomes a central point for everybody to access on it. That's why we obviously use our NWFs and NWDs to be able to transport information, and why sometimes these coordination issues come up again weeks later in another coordination meeting. So again, the tracking aspect, I think, is probably the Navisworks' biggest downfall, and I think that's where Revizto really steps in. And now with the integration with Procore, it really helps eliminate double data entry.
Absolutely, and to even further on that, Mark, I mean, if you think about it, Revizto provides that connective tissue from all that documentation and models, brings it into that coordination platform, use the power of the context to resolve any RFIs before they even happen. And if they do happen, we have a way to push that up into Procore, and it's pretty much seamless the whole way through. And what I always like to touch on too is the human element of the situation. When you have people lifting information from one system to another manually, humans are humans, and sometimes that information gets lost, it gets translated in some way, and this provides a rock solid way to refer back to the design information and get the information that was discussed around that into the source of truth of the project.
Absolutely.
So I got a couple questions that I would like to answer before we jump off, if possible.
Sure.
One was One was Todd Hodges, and he asked about the availability in the UK and Ireland. And so I do want to touch on that because we are doing design coordination as limited release, meaning we're kind of doing a slower rollout, targeting the international customers in Q2. Right, so one of the biggest reasons for that is making sure that the level of support that you're receiving right now continues as we expand into new tools. And so that's a key piece. We want to make sure that you have the support you need. So that, that's the timing that we're thinking for availability. I'm sorry, Tom Nochter, not Todd Hodges, Tom Nochter's question about the UK and Ireland. And so that's when we're anticipating that launch. The other one was about RFIs and Procore. Please show more about the life cycle of an RFI in Procore. Can you track it inside Procore if it's solved or not? Absolutely. So in the RFI module, you'll see there's a exhaustive change history that lets you know. You can also see there's a commenting so that the designers can comment back and forth, and actions that you can take, so you can track that RFI, every event, every detail that's happening. But the key there is that when there's as the designers work through it, once there's that response that is the official response and that's selected as the official response, that's what's triggering the changes of saying, well, that's been released now, and now your VDC teams or whoever is modeling or taking action can now take action, and they're not blocked anymore by that RFI.
Awesome. Yeah, great point, Dave. And when those statuses change inside of Procore, that changes the filtering mechanism inside of Revizto. So if you guys are in Revizto, that happens in real time. So you will be able to see if it's an RFI or if it's in the coordination module based on either the RFI logo or the Procore logo for the coordination module. So guys, I wanted to thank everybody again for sticking around. I know we all know how busy your days are, and it means a ton for us to cut out an hour during the middle of the day to jump on and learn more about some of the stuff that we've been working on. So again, we thank you for joining us. And again, I think we'll have probably a couple more webinars in Q2 with actually customers that are utilizing it and go through the exact workflow. So we look forward to that, and thank you guys all again.